When somebody comes to me and says, well, it's a guy in a suit, how can you believe a guy in a suit? It's because that's part of the deal. When I sign up for seeing a Godzilla movie, I want to believe.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, I mean, I think that's why, in my opinion, Pacific Rim worked better than Godzilla 14 did, right? Because it was digital, but there was a very organic design behind everything. You know, it's readily available where Del Toro says, I want you to make sure that all these monsters, if they were made into a real item, could fit a person. Like, they're meant to be a person inside that suit, so everything has to have a person should be able to fit inside the suit vibe to it. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, and I think that Pacific Rim does work better in some ways than Godzilla. What are we calling that now? We calling that the...
I call it Godzilla 14.
Call it Godzilla 2014? Or the
what was that? Legendary Godzilla?
Okay. Legendary, yeah, okay, Legendary Godzilla.
Legendary, that's fair.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's
true.
Godzilla.
Yeah, no, it pairs it with TriStar, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Our new swear word, yeah. God, TriStar.
TriStar, broader.
You watch your mask. So Frank was talking a little bit about Showa suits. Did you have some thoughts on Showa acting when you think upon those?
Yeah, I'm currently teaching a world's greatest film course at Colorado Mesa University online, and one of the things that occurred to me about this is when you go back to the classic era of films, there certainly was a performing style, but they took their performances seriously. And when you look at, especially the first 5 or 6, and I'd argue all of them, but the first 5 or 6 Showa era films, you've got actors who are vested in what is going on. You believe them. You know, Akira Takarada in the first film, he's in love, but he's in a love triangle that his culture is demanding of him that he respect, but at the same time his culture is changing because it's after the war. So he can break that. And Serizawa, and I forget the actor's name, dude.
I think the actor's name too, I'm sorry.
Okay, and I'm just bad with the Japanese names because I just know them as their characters, but his torment over, you know, he's essentially created a different version of the atomic bomb, something so awful. He is viscerally tormented, and I don't know about you, but when I watch that film, especially in the Japanese, without the dubbing, I believe it. I don't feel he's overacting. I don't feel he's an arch scientist who's, oh, I'm so torn up. He's torn up. Well, look at Casablanca, okay, which came out something like 8 years beforehand, 8 or 10 years beforehand. Black and white, you've got all these wonderful actors, character actors. Even Humphrey Bogart is quote unquote a leading man. He really is more of a character actor. He plays kind of one type, but he's not the strapping guy. They're all very interesting. They're all very vested. When he has the drink and he's tormented over his love for this woman, no one's laughing at him thinking that's a Kennedy performance. We're with him. We're like, my God, this guy's so still in love. And so the thing I wanted to say, and I'm being long-winded about it, is that everyone in those films took the circumstances seriously as they could, even if they were guys in orange jumpsuits who turn out to be alien cockroaches. They took it seriously. There was never a wink and a nod that I can remember.
Right.
And then if we go to the next era,
which also, on a side note, is why TriStar was terrible, right?
Yeah. Oh my God.
I personally went on a thought experiment for a while, and my thought experiment was, and I think I said this at last year's panel, and that was probably when I was in the middle of the thought experiment, which was, if we renamed Godzilla TriStar, Attack of the Giant Iguana, and never used Godzilla as a word in it, would it be good, right? And so my thing was, it's probably not that bad, it's not Godzilla, you know? And then I basically got waved off that by about 6 different people, and they were like, no, it's really, really bad, right? But a lot of that is that, you know, the wink and a nudge, it's a whole lot of fish, you know, like all that stuff.
Right, yeah, all the way through it. I mean, my favorite character in it.
People just wisecracking their way through it.
Yeah, and my favorite character in it is Jean Reno. because he could carry it off.
Yeah.
And he seems like he's in a movie, but at the same time he's making fun of everything. I just love him in that film.
Yeah. Evolving from stage acting, so it was freaking huge, right? Because the actors were used to performing to the person way back there, you know. So then you get them on screen, and they were absolutely huge. You know, I mean, I think back to I took some classes in like Kurosawa films, right? And that was the thing that struck me about that just the first wave of Kurosawa is a lot of reform. You know, it's a lot of stage actors that then make their way to the screen.
Yeah.
Well, the Japanese tradition is different too.
That's
the
true.
Japanese theatrical tradition is much different than the American theatrical tradition. So you're going to see a lot of differences in that regard too.
Yeah.
I mean, and then the 50s in American cinema, we had already started going over to the method acting. We had all with Elia Kazan and James Dean and Marlon Brando, those guys were here. But in Japan, when they were really rebuilding their cinema industry, I mean, it had all been destroyed after the war.
Yeah.
So I think that even in spite of that, in spite of the theatrical thing, I think the acting, you're right, that's one of the beautiful things about the original 1954, is that there is a human story there. Now I would argue that as the films go on, and Godzilla becomes more the star, the human elements becomes a little bit more trite and a little bit more like,
I
okay,
totally
let's get past
agree.
this. I want to get to the monsters.
Sure.
I think that's what hurt the legendary film, I think, because I'm a little bit of a defender of the legendary film.
Oh yeah.
Because
well, look, Steve's not here for once, so you.
I know,
You can actually say a
Steve and I
positive
would
thing
go
about
out for
anybody
round.
who's not
I
familiar
would
with Steve's work.
I would defend the legendary.
yeah.
Like, I'm kind of familiar with what you're saying about that myself. Like, the main character arc with the younger leads, I really didn't like that. I was more preferential towards the secondary leads because since, for me, after so many years, those who I think should have been the main leads in the Godzilla film, the admirals and the scientists.
Right, yeah. Bryan Cranston should not have been killed, and he would have been a much more powerful force. Especially a guy whose whole entire life has been trying to prove the existence of these creatures.
Well, in that film, it would have been the best role. I mean, he's got chops, right? He's fantastic.
But to be fair to and I forget the actor's name right now, the younger
Aaron
lead.
Taylor-Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, he's no slouch as an actor. This guy's kick-ass. He's played John Lennon in Nowhere Boy,
Right, yeah.
which is a fantastic film for any Beatles fans out there. He's no slouch either. He's really talented. The role was thin, and nobody really cared. And as you know, there wasn't enough Godzilla. Let's face it. We wanted more monster action. And please, can we have some daylight scenes next time? I bought the Blu-ray of this thing. I brought it home to watch, and I was like,
Now with extended daylight scenes.
it was so pitch black.
Yeah, the transfer has been-
I had to turn the contrast up. It was, I mean,
Yeah. Well, okay. So we've talked about the. I mean, and actually, I want to
hopping
make
around,
one other-
obviously.
I want to make one other point about the Showa era, which Steven kind of touched on, which is that whole style of acting did carry itself all the way through to the end of the era.
Absolutely.
Because even in things like Gigan, like we were just talking about, it's serious acting. You know what I mean? And I think the directors and at least script writers and whoever looked to get comedy in different methods than maybe having the actors provide it. Like they dressed the one guy up in the headband and had him comically eat bananas. You know, like that kind of stuff. But it wasn't ruining the integrity of the character or anything in a verbal way or in a way they act or anything, because then things would get serious, and that guy did serious things.
And also, a director like Ishiro Hondo, he's there for most of those films in the Showa era. So he definitely is able to put forth a template for which all those films are supposed to follow.
Yeah.
And I think you see that there's a definite consistency of style in those films from the 50s into the 70s.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's talk a little like Heisei and maybe Millennium now. Do you want to talk a little bit about the same thing, like maybe?
Sure, so Heisei, I mean, obviously that starts with Godzilla 1984 or 1985, depending on how you came into it. And we were back, it's almost like reboot time because we're starting off with bad Godzilla again. We pretty much ignore all the creatures that we've been watching for the last like 20 years, and we're starting over at ground one. And we have a much more interesting looking suit. I mean, his head's a little bit more streamlined. His upper lip snarls. Yeah, I know. So, and it's a whole different. I was excited when in 1985. I saw it as Godzilla in 1985.
Yeah,
So
in the theaters.
In the theaters, yeah, with Raymond Burr wraparound. Raymond Burr. Steve Martin, for all those who remember. Yes.
What do you think of Raymond Burr from 54, 55 to 84, 85?
I think that back in the 50s, Raymond Burr he wasn't Raymond Burr for one.
We talked about acting.
What
Well,
do
as far as
you
that-
think about Raymond Burr?
The movies make sense either way, but I prefer the 54 and 84.
Yeah, well, the Japanese versions are obviously
Yeah.
what was
Or
intended.
they threw the American
Right.
style into the Japanese.
Yeah, I mean, they made it a wraparound. And also, too, it's the first original monster we've had in God knows how long. How many fans of Godzilla versus Ballhead out there? Okay, we got some folks.
That sneaks up the fan favorite list, that's for sure. Yeah.
Now, speaking of music,
Yeah,
Sure.
Because that's a different film for music.
because Godzilla versus Ballhead is almost unwatchable to me
Really?
because of how awful I find the soundtrack. The soundtrack seems to be from a whole different film type, and I'm like, I wish someone, I don't have the ability anymore, but would like edit in stuff from Ifukube
Right.
and let me try watching the film that way. Because it literally is ruined. I've seen the film several times now, and I'm like, I can't get past it. This is killing me.
Yeah.
And Ballhead is an awesome creation. I
Yes.
mean, the themes, the rose, the daughter. I mean, there's so much going on that's great. And you know, I'm very soundtrack oriented in this whole.
On a related note, I super love the 73 and 74 soundtracks, however. That's fun.
Some of those stuff from
I love the funky soundtracks. I make no apology.
Hedorah, Godzilla versus Hedorah,
Yeah.
is one of my favorite soundtracks.
Oh,
I love that.
It's so unusual. Yeah. Anyway, but okay. So yeah, no. I mean, I'll agree with you, but you know that doesn't necessarily make it quorum on the Ballhead thing. But I mean, look, there's a lot of varied opinions. But yes, I think that music is sleepy and serene. Right, and I don't know if that necessarily works, but I mean, my personal taste is that I want dark orchestral.
Yeah, well, and you definitely get dark storylines.
Yeah.
They say, I'm trying to find here, there's this one version of the Godzilla suit that was during this era, which was, we've seen.
It's a really nice PowerPoint, Frank. It's a damn shame.
I know, people can come up later, I'll show you. But there's a it was the what they call the Radagoji version of Godzilla. And it was the Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla in 1993. And I remember there was a lot of people when the legendary Godzilla came out, here I am defending it again, we were talking about how fat Godzilla looked.
Oh yeah.
And Godzilla's weight fluctuates a lot throughout the all the series. And this suit here, I think he's probably the chubbiest Godzilla who's ever been in this movie. He is not a slim customer here.
They call it, I believe they call it the Thunder Thighs, I believe.
Yeah.
Of this era or the legendary?
Like,
No, I think that
Yeah,
is.
this era.
Yeah,
It's definitely.
Yeah.
yeah.
He's not the svelte guy.
How about any thoughts on Millennium, Frank?
Thoughts on Millennium? You know, I love Godzilla 2000, and you know, as bug nuts as Final Wars is, I dig it. I'm fine. It's
How many people here like Final Wars? How many people do not like Final Wars? Okay.
I wasn't a huge fan of the suit design, and I thought, I mean, I like the whole tongue-in-cheek thing of Godzilla in general, but it was a little too tongue-in-cheek for me. It's like that one scene where like Zilla gets like knocked off in like one hit, and you hear him scream, "Ah, tuna breath!" or I got a face palm really hard.
Yeah. I enjoyed it, but it was just, it's so insane. You know, like,
It's like
it stands on its own for how just bat crap nuts it is.
Well,
You
but
know,
it's also
in the
not-
Godzilla pantheon anyway.
All right.